So when you come into the editor and you're either creating a new template from scratch or customizing a template someone else has created for you so that it better fits your brand, the first step I would always recommend that you do is come up to the Edit Styles and Formatting section. And when we click on this, this is going to open up the design editor. And there's a few different kinds of settings that we can access from here. We can change up the type styles. We can alter the styling of the tables. And then we can also change the format of the page. So just to go right in order, the type design editor, this is what sets the look of those type styles that we were just using a moment ago. So if we use this drop down, you can see all of those same type styles here. And if we choose one, say heading 1, you'll see, first of all the heading 1s come into focus in the proposal, so we know what we're editing. And also we get all of the settings for that heading over on the right. So these are all pretty familiar text formatting settings like size, color, the style, the alignment, the margins before and after a paragraph of that type style. But up at the top, we can also set the font family for this type style. So right now in Encore, it's set to Roboto Condensed. But if we click on this dropdown, we're going to see a list of all the different fonts that we have installed on our account. And we can choose whatever we want, such as Oswald. And you'll see that it changed to a slightly different font there. Maybe we want something that's much different. So let's try Great Vibes. And you can see that's a totally different look. Now, if you don't see a font that you want in this list, you can click the Find New Fonts button. And it'll ask you to save your changes, so we'll say yes. And then this is going to take you to the list of all the fonts that Proposify has available. And these are sourced from Google Fonts, so you'll see some very popular, very well-respected fonts in this list. And what we can do is we can just scroll through and look at the samples if we would like. If we have a certain name we're looking for, we can search for it. And then once we found a font that we want, we can just use this switch over to the side to activate it. And then that will show up in our list in our style editor so we can start to use it throughout our proposals. One more note on this font list. If you want to see the list of your installed fonts, you can just hit this button up next to the search bar, and that will show you the fonts that you have installed. And then if you would like to go back to the main library, you can just hit that button again. Coming back to the design editor in our template, then we will move on to tables. So Proposify has 3 different styles for table rows. It has a header row style, a body row style, and a footer row style. And over here on the right in our pricing table, you can actually see all 3 of those styles reflected. This cyan row, that is a header row. The rows for all of the pricing items, those are body rows. And then actually this last row for the total, that is a footer row. It just looks similar because in Encore, we've decided to style it so it's similar to body rows. And so, of course, in the design editor, you'll see a section of attributes for each of those categories. So under header, we have all of the styling that's going into the header. And so we're able to change that to a different color if we would like. We can maybe say, I would like a border below all of the header rows, and let's make it really thick and give it a really outrageous color so we can know that it's there. And then lastly, we can edit the padding if we feel like there's too much space around the text, or if we want more, we can just use these attributes to sort of tweak that a little. Maybe let's shove everything to the left, shove everything to the right. And then once again, I've passed over the very first option we have, which is called font style. And what this is the default font style that Proposify will use when you put your cursor inside of a header row and just start typing. So right now it's set to table header, which makes sense, but we could set this to anything we wanted, such as quote, and you'll see that it alters that a little, or even something more outrageous like a heading 3. And you'll see it's quite different. But the reason I left this to last is that there's a little quirk of complexity with this, which is that if we were to go in here and manually assign a type style to each of these bits of text, they would ignore whatever setting we have set up in the design editor. So just to do that real quick, I'm going to reset this to table header and hit save. And then I'm going to double click to enter into this table and change this description from a table header to a heading 4. And now that I've done that, I'm going to click off of it to deselect it and go back into my design editor, tables, header, and then I'm going to change the font style that I want applied to headers to maybe, let's say, a heading 3. Those were those big blue headers that we were seeing just a moment ago. And when I do that, you'll see that price, quantity, and subtotal all reformatted themselves, but description, because we've manually assigned this to be a heading 4, still is a heading 4. So as you're choosing the default font style for what you'd like your template to be, and maybe you're seeing some text throughout the tables in your proposal that aren't reformatting when you do that, a good idea is actually to go into that table, select the text that's causing you trouble, and click that clear formatting button. And that will reset it to what the default type style for that situation is. For footer rows, the choices are just about the same, where you can set a default font for footer rows, give it a color. Let's say, maybe let's do a green this time. Give it a bottom border if we so choose. And then adjust the padding. And so that's all swell. But when we open up body row, we're going to see that it's a little more complicated. And that's because Proposify has the ability to alternate styling between body rows if you would like to break up the look of your design a little bit. We actually have 2 duplicate sets of attributes. So here at the top, we've got the attributes for the first, third, and fifth row in the table. And then down here, under the alternate rows category, these are the attributes that would be applied to the second, fourth, and sixth row. And you'll see right now in Encore, we've got both styles turned on, and we've got them set up to be the exact same thing. So if I were to change the alternate row section to be a slightly grayer color, you'll see in our table, every other row has changed to be that grayer color. And so I can go on to maybe give it a different color of bottom border, change the size. And so this gives you a lot of latitude if you have long tables to break them up visually a little bit and make it easier for your clients to sort of track which line is going with which price. It is worth noting, however, that you can't change every single attribute for either row. The padding and the default font style do remain the same. And then the final section of our design editor are the page layout settings. And here you can choose between a few different paper sizes. We've got letter, which is 8.5 by 11. We've got A4, which is approximately 8.3 by 11.7 inches. And then we've got legal, which is 8.5 by 14 inches. And if we click between these, you can see that the page changes shape. Now, one thing to note if you're working with a pre-made template is that as you adjust these page settings, you may actually goof up bits of the design. So for instance, we've changed from A4 to legal, which is a much longer paper size. And so when we look over here at the preview and scroll down to the bottom, we see that the sidebar actually is not long enough for that page anymore. So if you're working with a pre-made template, I would actually advise that you more or less keep things to the page size that they start out with. Similarly, you can change the page orientation from portrait to landscape. And this can give you a lot of flexibility if you want to make something that looks a little bit more like a presentation, or you need more horizontal room for a lot of photos or something like that. But once again, if you're working with a pre-made template, I would suggest that you leave these controls alone because, as you can see, it can sort of goof up backgrounds and other full page elements. And then finally, we have the margins. And as we change these, you will see the text on the page reflow depending on how we push it, if we give it more room, if we shift it left or right. And then once again, I'm going to say, if you're working with a pre-made template, I would suggest that you leave the margins alone. Typically, when you're working with a pre-made template, all of these page settings are set to exactly what they should be out of the gate. So unless you have compelling reasons to alter them, you should probably leave them be. So once we're done making all our edits in the design editor, we can come down here and click Save to keep them.